Good to go. Hello, everyone. Bonjour. Thank you for joining us today in beautiful Victoria, and what a beautiful day it is. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Lukungan peoples, known today as the Sanghi and Esquimalt nations. With me today are the Honourable Sean Fraser, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and Minister responsible for Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, who will give remarks. Premier David Eby, the Honourable Niki Sharma, Deputy Premier and BC's Attorney General, the Honourable Nina Krieger, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. It's intolerable that any woman should be murdered by her ex-partner or partner in a case of intimate partner violence. It's a tragedy when one that is compounded when it is found that her attacker was out on bail. Ces crimes de rétention de vie et laissés de cicatrices indélébiles. Canadians expect the Government of Canada to act decisively to keep communities safe, and that is exactly what we are doing. On October 24th, Minister Fraser introduced the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act in Parliament. The legislation introduces sweeping reforms to make bail laws stricter and sentencing laws tougher. Bill C-14 is the result of several months of close collaboration and consultations with provinces and territories which are responsible for the administration of justice as well as law enforcement on the ground. BC has been particularly vocal and active in respects to intimate partner violence, and for that we are very grateful. Our reforms are rigorous but fair and evidence-based. Nous ne visons pas faire les manchettes. Notre objectif est plutôt de bâtir un Canada plus sûr et plus fort, fondé sur le primauté de droit et travers des actions concrètes. We're not trying to make headlines. Our goal is to build a safer and stronger Canada through concrete actions and founded on the rule of law. I'll now turn it over to our wonderful Premier David Eby.
Thank you, MP Sarai. It's great to see you here in Victoria, and great to see the disturbingly tall Sean Fraser here as well. It's alarming for me as well. It's great to be here with you to mark the introduction of a bill in the federal parliament that British Columbia has been advocating for a long time. British Columbians have wanted to see the federal government introduce a bill that reflects the anxieties that are in many communities across the province. Anxieties which are based in the concern that there is a small group of individuals causing an outsized amount of harm, and that at root of it is a loss of respect for the criminal law, whether it's repeat shoplifting over and over and over again, whether it's violent offending, where someone commits a violent offense and then is returned back to the community using the existing bail laws. We know that the laws have to change, and we are very grateful that the federal government has heard our concerns, worked with us collaboratively, and has introduced a bill that responds to those anxieties that British Columbians rightly feel. I'd like to specifically recognize Nina Krieger, our Public Safety Minister, who worked with the federal government to ensure that provisions around extortion are in place in this bill. And the Attorney General, Niki Sharma, who worked closely putting forward proposals around bail reform, as well as around intimate partner violence, and ensuring that we don't see another situation like that took the life of Bailey McCourt, where her abuser was released after being convicted back into the community and used that time to murder Bailey. To know that no one will ever be killed like that again is crucially important for British Columbians. I think that as we look forward to continued work with the federal government, conversations about intimate partner violence will continue. We continue to advocate for the reforms the family is asking for related to a presumption around first-degree murder. We raised that with the minister today. We continue to look forward to ways that we can ensure that the criminal justice system is working quickly and efficiently and controlling some of the growing demands that put delays into the justice system, and ways we can ensure efficiency and fairness in the trial process. But the bottom line is this. This is an incredibly important bill. It is a very responsive bill. It will be an effective bill. And I call on all members of the federal parliament and the Senate to pass this bill as quickly as possible to ensure that these tools are in the hands of prosecutors to ensure that our communities are safe. With that, I'll pass it over to the Deputy Premier and Attorney General, Niki Sharma.
Thank you. I'm really glad this podium is set to my height, so just want to give a shout out to the team to put it together. A really great day today, and I just want to start by welcoming MP Sarai and Minister Fraser here in Victoria. We are really happy to see the changes that the bail and sentencing bill will introduce to the criminal code, particularly as the Premier suggested around repeat and violent offenders that have been causing so much chaos in some of our communities. We've heard from mayors and councillors that that law needs to change, and we're glad to see that reflected in the bill. Just want to again say thank you to the federal government for listening to BC's ideas. We had an extremely collaborative process where I was able to present ideas of where we thought the criminal code should change to tighten up around repeat and violent offenders, to be stronger around intimate partner violence, and to help with many things. Also buried in there is the virtual hearings for the BC Review Board, which is going to be another aspect that is really good for the administration of justice here in BC. Had we not had that type of collaborative process, we wouldn't see the changes that we needed to see in BC reflected in this bill. So I am grateful to Minister Fraser and his team. And the work continues. I know that there are plans to introduce further changes to the criminal code, and BC will be at the table presenting our ideas and our thoughts on what could tighten up the criminal code and what we need to do to make a justice system that everybody sees, shows proper respect for the law, puts the right people behind bars, and upholds what we all want, which is safer communities everywhere across the country. I want to pass it over to Minister Fraser. Again, with gratitude with the work that we have done so far, and with a strong welcome from everybody here in Victoria, and we look forward to the continued work.
Look, thank you so much. Everybody's been making comments about height. I just wanted to let the Premier know I wore my lifts today to ensure that I held up my end of the bargain. Look, on a more serious note, I just want to let you know that I'm here in the spirit of gratitude. I want to recognize the extraordinary contributions of the provincial government here in British Columbia, but also of my caucus colleagues, including Randeep in particular, for their advocacy for some of the measures that I want to highlight as part of the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act today. Last week, I tabled the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act in the House of Commons, which includes more than 80 specific measures that are effectively designed to do two things. The first is to make it harder to get bail for people who have committed violent offences and who habitually find themselves before the justice system because of the violent repeat nature of their criminal offences that they commit or have been charged with. The second is that we want to impose stronger sentences for those who commit the most serious crimes in this country, to ensure that the criminal code reflects the experience that so many Canadians have seen in their communities over the course of the past several years. Too often, we wake up to newspaper headlines that indicate yet again a violent offender has been released on bail only to have reoffended. Too often, we see cases make their way into the public discourse where it's hard to understand how a specific penalty has been issued given the severity of the crime that's being considered. The Bail and Sentencing Reform Act is going to make meaningful changes in a few key ways. But before I get into some of the specifics that the provincial government and members of Parliament from British Columbia have been particularly influential on, I just do want to highlight the process of collaboration. One of the first pieces of correspondence that I had came from the provincial government here in BC, and I want to once again thank Minister Sharma in particular, not only for the initial letter, but for a follow-up phone call, for continued in-person meetings, for both Minister Krieger and Minister Sharma's presence at the federal provincial territorial meeting of Ministers of Justice and Public Safety. The level of engagement that I saw was uncommon compared to the experiences that I had across different portfolios over the course of 10 years in federal politics. Certainly we campaigned on a number of the measures that were included in the bill during the recent federal election campaign. But the bill was significantly strengthened with new measures added specifically to incorporate the feedback that we heard from provincial governments. Although the federal government may control the text of the criminal code, provinces have a huge hand in the administration of justice in their own jurisdictions. They deserve to be listened to as part of this process, and this exercise in collaboration and engagement has, in my view, significantly strengthened the final product that will help promote safer communities. Just to avoid talking in generalities, I want to point to a few specific examples of how the provincial government here and how local members of parliament have influenced the bill. The bill includes a series of reverse onuses. For those who are not familiar with what a reverse onus is, typically it's the Crown who bears the obligation to demonstrate why an accused ought to be detained on the basis of the unlikelihood they'll show up for trial, the continuing threat they pose to public safety, or the fact that their release would call into question the public's faith in the administration of justice. A reverse onus flips that script for certain people, particularly those who are charged with very serious offences or perhaps who habitually find themselves before the court. We have the opportunity to ensure that they demonstrate why they ought to be released and prove that they do not pose a threat to the public safety before a court will grant them bail. Reverse onuses are being expanded in this bill to capture new categories of offences. One is specifically assaults and sexual assaults that involve choking or strangulation. This is something that came directly from the provincial government here, and Minister Sharma in particular, given the evidence that she cited in our conversations that people who are charged with those offences are more likely, if released, to become violent in their communities. In addition, we are adding a reverse onus provision for people who have been convicted but have not yet been sentenced. These are people who are not innocent at law, but have had a court determine beyond a reasonable doubt that they have committed a criminal offence. I also specifically want to draw attention to the role that extortion, this bill plays when it comes to dealing with extortion. Of course, the criminal code involves very serious penalties for extortion, which is obviously illegal. Violent extortion has a mandatory minimum penalty of years in prison. If you do it more than once, it can carry penalties up to life. But that severity of extortion as a crime has not necessarily been properly reflected in the bail system. As a result of the changes that we're making, again, pursuant to the feedback of the provincial government locally and our local members of parliament, including Randeep in particular and Suk Dalawal as well, we are changing the rules for violent extortion to ensure that someone who's charged with such an offence will have the responsibility of demonstrating why they ought to be released. The bill, as I mentioned at the outset, it doesn't just deal with bail, but also deals with sentencing. Some of the changes that we will be making will involve consecutive sentences for certain offences involving extortion. For example, oftentimes, for those who aren't familiar, if you're sentenced with multiple offences, you can serve them both at once. If you, in my view, are sentenced to one offence that carries a penalty of 4 years and another that carries a penalty of 2, you should serve both sentences for a total of 6 years. We will be establishing a series of consecutive sentences that will turn that vision into a reality, including, for example, someone who commits extortion and combines that with the offence of arson by burning down the home or place of business of the person that they were seeking to extort. In addition, one of the major changes that I know is a priority for this province is ensuring that people who commit sexual crimes, sexual assault or sexual crimes against children actually face jail time. We will be changing the applicability of conditional sentencing orders to ensure that if you commit a serious sexual assault, including a sexual assault or sexual crime against a Canadian child, that house arrest will not be an option in those circumstances. I'll conclude on the specific points just by drawing into focus the importance of the concept the Premier mentioned about ensuring that there is respect for the law. Too often we see entire communities seeing a small number of people responsible for an enormous majority of the criminal offences that are committed. If people do not have respect for the law, seeing them simply released time and time again doesn't seem like the appropriate outcome. One of the changes that we're making is to ensure that when the court is considering whether the public faith in the administration of justice would be called into question should a person be released, is the number of charges, not just the seriousness, but the number of outstanding charges that the individual is facing. At a certain point in time, we have to recognize people who continually violate court orders, people who continually violate the criminal law with impunity, need to have that reflected not only in what sentences may follow, but also in the process of bail. To conclude, I just want to say that this is part of the path forward to establish safer communities. The Prime Minister has released a strategy with 3 specific prongs. The first is stronger laws to help promote safer communities, including not only the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, but the Combating Hate Act that we tabled earlier this year in Parliament, and a new bill that will be tabled before Christmas that will include consideration of intimate partner violence, new sexual offences, exploiting children online, the role of victims in the process, and delays specifically that attach to the Jordan decision. But in addition to that first pillar, we need to ensure that we support the front line to give law enforcement the tools that it needs to help keep communities safe. In areas of federal jurisdiction, that includes 1,000 new RCMP personnel, 1,000 new officers at the border, and more support for the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. But finally, if we want violent crime in the long term, we need to make upstream investments in affordable support, mental health, and support at-risk youth to ensure that we prevent crime before it happens. When we achieve that goal, we will know we have succeeded. But until and thank you to the provincial government here in British Columbia for their extraordinary spirit of collaboration and for granting their expertise development. Thank
you. Here in person, as well as those on the phone line.
I think we have a moderator.
Yeah, right here.
I see you, but
right, thanks. We're going to start off. All members of the media will be limited to 1 question and 1 follow-up. We're going to start with Rob Shaw from Czech News. Go ahead, Rob.
Hi there. For Minister Fraser and probably Minister Sharma, your bill talks about strengthening driving prohibitions. There's a case of a 12-year-old boy on the island here, Xavier, who was killed by a driver. His family has been advocating for lifetime driving bans upon conviction and also more ability to revoke someone's driving permissions when they're charged with something. Have you heard of that story? Does this do anything on those lines? And Minister Sharma, you were checking into that and hoping you could give us an update on that.
certainly. So happy to go first, but we'll gladly share the floor. Look, when you hear stories like that, you can't help but be heartbroken. There's a family who will spend the rest of their lives without someone that they love so dearly. The law can change to help ensure that people who are criminally negligent and cause the death of another person or serious bodily harm, to ensure that they're not allowed to be behind the wheel. Obviously, this often involves organizations that promote advocacy, such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, though it's not restricted to that form of reckless driving. This bill does restore the ability of courts to implement a driving prohibition on people who are charged with criminal negligence causing death or bodily harm. There were changes in 2018 to the law that sought to move charges relating to dangerous driving into a different regime. What we ended up seeing, perhaps against our expectation at the time, is many of the charges that were laid nevertheless continued under the existing provisions of criminal negligence rather than simply dangerous driving. Restoring the ability of the court to prohibit dangerous drivers from getting behind the wheel is something this bill will allow, and I hope will improve public safety for families such as that you've mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, as a follow-up to that question that I know you asked me last week, we think that it will tighten up certain aspects of the law related to sentencing and when people are going through the system, but we're still looking at our pieces of legislation and how we might coincide with any driver's license impacts to people that are conducting such serious and deadly acts.
Do you have a follow-up question, Rob?
Sure. Unrelated topic for Premier Eby. Are you intending to go through with your ad campaign targeting the United States, given what we have seen President Trump's response to the Ontario ad campaign and the increase of tariffs? Have you talked to the Prime Minister about it? Are you worried it might provoke a reaction? If he asked you not to do it, would you not do it? Just walk us through that.
Yeah, first of all, let me say that I support unambiguously Premier Ford's advertisements in the United States. It is absolutely essential that we talk to Americans about the implications of tariffs, about the fact that trade policy in the United States right now is governed not by logic, not by economics, not by relationship, but by something else entirely, and by one individual in the White House. And the best example that I can give of that is the fact that Russia has better access to the US market right now for softwood than Canada does. Russia, that launched a war of aggression against Ukraine, the whole world sanctioning them, delivering arms to Ukraine, support to Ukraine to fight the first war in Europe in a generation, and they are able to sell their softwood to the Americans at a lower tariff rate than Canadians are. This kind of nonsense and absurdity needs to be brought to the attention of the American people and decision makers. I have had conversations with senior officials in the federal government, specifically the ministers responsible for trade, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Jolie, and I have asked them to come to British Columbia for an emergency meeting on forestry. This is a foundational industry for our country. It is crucial in British Columbia. It is on the edge. It was already challenged before the additional 10% tariff, but now we're seeing mills close. We're seeing the loss of shifts accelerate, and I believe that by working together, we'll be able to not just provide support to workers, which is crucial in communities, but work together to ensure that our industry is there for the long term by pivoting to other markets. To that end, I'm happy to share that we're opening an office in the UK that is specifically focused on expanding access to forest products in the UK, in the EU, and North Africa, and select markets in the Middle East. This is the work that we're continuing to do to pivot to other markets as well. So we will continue to work to get the word out about the unfair and absurd treatment of the United States of Canada, but we can't control the man in the White House. All we can do is control our own destiny by ensuring that we're working with trade partners that value the resources and the work that Canadians bring to the global economy.
Our next question will come from Alec Lazenby from Vancouver Sun. Go ahead, Alec.
Hi, Premier. On another unrelated topic, the BCGEU reached a tentative agreement this past weekend. Your response to the terms of the deal that were reached, and your response to why it took so long to get here.
Well, I know that this has been a challenging strike for many people in the province, especially those in the hospitality sector. Restaurants have really felt the impact of this strike. Many British Columbians trying to get business done. And certainly provincially, as we work to advance our agenda of growing our economy here and delivering high-quality public services, we can't do that without government workers. So I'm very glad that we've reached a tentative agreement. I understand that the members will be voting on that soon, and out of respect for the vote that members will be undertaking, I'm going to keep my comments at expressing gratitude for the work around the table to reach this tentative deal, and look forward to seeing the results of that vote.
And Alec, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, and back to the bail reform legislation, Minister Sharma, you mentioned that work is still ongoing around some changes that the family is pushing for around first-degree murder in the cases like these. What is that work ongoing? Why wasn't it included in that bill? Minister Fraser, maybe you can respond to that as well. Just what's the work that needs to get there for the first-degree murder piece of this, and why wasn't it included in this legislation?
First, or happy to. Yeah, sure. Look, thanks very much for the question. The bill that we're discussing today was about two things: bail and sentencing. There is a separate bill that is part of the first plank in the larger strategy I discussed around having stronger laws to promote safer communities that will be taken. That bill is going to include a series of different measures that touch on intimate partner violence, sexual offences, protecting kids online, and a number of others. We included a presumptive first-degree murder charge for cases of femicide in our election campaign platform. We had a very useful discussion today before we joined you here in public about what the family had requested through the provincial government of BC. We have a little bit of work before that bill and its final terms are complete. Over the next number of weeks, we will be completing the policy development exercise with a goal to presenting a bill that addresses a number of the different items that I've just discussed again before the House of Commons rises in December.
I will add is that I did have a conversation with Minister Fraser about the next part of the criminal code changes that are coming related to intimate partner violence. And as the Premier mentioned, we're here to advocate for what we think is needed in the province. And I'll certainly be sharing our ideas on policy changes that are out of that broad general category of intimate partner violence and sexual assault cases. And we hope to continue the collaborative approach that we've had so far.
Our next question will come from Emily Fagan from CBC News. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. For Minister Fraser and Minister Sharma and Premier Eby, can you speak to, what conversations were had directly, with the families of victims, like the McCourt family, about this legislation? What kind of consultations, what kind of feedback did you get, prior to this legislation being tabled?
Certainly. Well, look, I think there will be others who are best positioned to answer this, but this is a case that has captured the attention of Canadians. I first heard of it actually in the early days in this this position over the course of the summer and fall. I heard from members of all of the different political parties about the importance of addressing some of the challenges. My colleague Steve Fuhr from Kelowna, I believe, was the first to raise it with me. Minister Sharma, around the same time, Frank Caputo, a member of Parliament with the Conservatives, has discussed this case with me on a number of occasions. I was actually emailing with Frank this morning, who's with the family as they're in Ottawa testifying before a parliamentary standing committee. We hope to take their feedback and, frankly, the lived reality of so many families who have lived through these kinds of tragedies to demonstrate that the law in Canada can be responsive to the changing threats that our communities are facing and the experience of people who've lived through these tragedies. I do expect that members of Parliament and provincial representatives from British Columbia are close to some of the individuals impacted, so I'd be happy to make space for Minister Sharma.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying that the lived experience of people through our justice systems is something that I hold, and I know our government holds at the very top of the work that we do, and that means meeting with a range of people that have gone through the process where there's tragic outcomes. Every time something happens, we take a look and see where did the system fail and what do we need to change. That's our job. We'll continue to do that. With Bailey's family, I know that the Premier and the Premier's office has been in touch with them. We'll continue that dialogue about what needs to change, right, to make sure that never happens again. And certainly some of it's included in this bill, and there'll always be more work to do. And we'll continue to talk with people that are impacted by the many things, including intimate partner violence, to see what those changes are and what they need to be. And that through the grief, we can have changes.
I'll only add that I'm meeting with the McCourt family this afternoon. Thanks.
And Emily, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. So the BC Civil Liberties Association and other groups have expressed frustration with some of the reforms put forward in this bill. There's concerns about, charter rights and the presumption of innocence. If there were to be a charter challenge, what evidence and what basis would you defend this legislation, or what evidence, I guess, are you basing it on?
Thanks. I think it's crucially important, and we've got a good balance, I think, here in Canada, of ensuring that people's rights are protected when they face a criminal trial. We see other countries where it's called a trial, but the decision's made before you walk in the door. That's not what we want here in Canada. And also that we need to ensure that people are safe in their communities. And the balance needs to be correct in order for the public to have confidence in the criminal justice system. I believe that in the recent few years, especially in the post-COVID period, the majority of Canadians, I would include myself among them, are deeply concerned that there is an erosion of respect for the criminal law in Canada, to the point that people believe that the criminal justice system cannot and will not hold people accountable for repeated crimes, and that there are a group of individuals that understand that and are taking advantage of it, and that they are a small number of individuals, but they need to be held accountable. The failure to hold these individuals accountable, whether it's an abusive partner or someone who's extorting a local business, or whether it's someone who's repeatedly shoplifting in a downtown core, a merchant that's just trying to keep their doors open, or whether it's someone that is attacking people every time they're released from prison, regardless of the scenario, the criminal law has to respond. And that is why this bill is so important. That's why it's so crucial. Mr. Fraser and the Prime Minister and Sarai and the team federally have repriced the crucial obligation of the federal government to be responsive to what's happening in communities. That was our message to the federal government. You got to hear what's happening in communities. You got to act on it, and that's what this bill does. And I'm very very appreciative of that. the desire and the need to ensure that people's charter rights are protected is crucial. But so are the rights of people to be in their communities safe, to open and operate their businesses with comfort and security, knowing that if something happens, police can act, someone will be arrested, prosecuted, and jailed.
I got little to add to the Premier's response. You'd make a good politician one day, perhaps.
I gotta keep working on it. Yeah.
Look, I have enormous respect for the BC Civil Liberties Association and for those who advocate for the protection of the rights of Canadians more broadly. But in my opinion, we need not choose between our Constitution and public safety. We can advance laws that will protect our communities that comply with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. My goal here was to create a series of changes to Canada's criminal law that will help keep people safe and allow them to feel safe in their communities. Specifically, when we're looking at respect for the guidance we've seen from the court before, we have decided to clarify the meaning of the principle of restraint, but are adding language to the criminal code that is in accordance with the underlying decision of the Supreme Court to ensure, however, that courts treat public safety with paramount concern. If you want to look at some of the reverse onus provisions, this is not the first time reverse onuses have been added to the criminal code, and the unique focus on violence or ties to organized crime are clearly designed to ensure that we're not releasing people who potentially could pose a danger to the Canadian public. We want to continue to advance proposals that are going to allow people to live safely in their community and live their lives with a sense of peace and security that the criminal law can help deliver. But at the same time, I don't see a conflict with the need to advance laws that promote public safety with the ability to respect the constitutionally guaranteed rights outlined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Our next question will come from Robert Buffum from CTV News. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, thanks. My first question is on behalf of a colleague, and it's for Premier Eby. It's in the context of the BCGEU strike looking like it's coming to a close here. They've spoken to people in the restaurant industry and wine importers in particular who say, even with the strike coming to an end, the buildup and backlog of alcohol in warehouses is going to be very significant, and it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks, and they call it a dire situation that they characterize as requiring almost a military-like effort to help get that alcohol out of the warehouse onto shelves. So the question is, what is the government going to do to help expedite that process?
Well, I'm certainly really glad that we have reached a tentative agreement with the BCGEU. It needs to be ratified by the members, and they'll exercise their rights with respect to the tentative agreement as it stands. I know the restaurant owners and others have faced the brunt of the impact of this strike, and our goal will be to work with the BCGEU to ensure that we're restocking shelves as quickly as possible and minimizing economic harm to third parties like restaurants and others that have really felt the impact of this strike.
Question.
It goes back to the legislation reaction from the McCourt family. I know we've canvassed this a fair bit, but this morning they told me they were very disappointed that this presumptive first-degree murder charge in the context of a death with intimate partner violence was not part of the law, and it was something that a private member's bill had advocated for. They feel like politics is at play here in the NDP, not supporting Bailey's Law in that way. They're also disappointed they haven't met with the Attorney General yet. Premier Eby, you've said you're meeting this afternoon, so I guess that addresses that. But I wanted to get your reaction to the ongoing disappointment from the family, and maybe Minister Fraser, if I understood you to be saying that there would be first-degree murder charges in the context of intimate partner violence, a death in that context. You talked about femicide coming by Christmas. Can you confirm that that will be in the federal government's legislation?
Well, I mean, for the McCourt family, any day that passes that these law reforms are not in place is one day too many. They are a family that has seen the impact of a failure in our criminal law in the most dramatic and awful way imaginable. I share their impatience entirely, and I'm glad that we're addressing some of the issues that came out of that case, that horrific attack that took place. And it's not everything that they want yet, and it's not everything that I want yet. So we'll continue to work with the federal government on this. There are challenges around private members' bills that people who are in politics and members of the media will be well familiar with. But if you're not steeped in day-to-day politics, it can be incredibly frustrating. So I'll be meeting with the family this afternoon to talk through the advocacy work we've done together, which included hand-delivering a letter of theirs to the Prime Minister, the success that we've seen so far in getting these provisions into the bill, thanks to the work of the Attorney General, with the Attorney General federally, and that we are not done. We're going to continue to advocate for the family going forward. I'll pass it over to Minister Fraser.
Certainly. Look, thank you. Just to supplement the Premier's answer, first maybe to address the concern that you've raised. We will be tabling a new piece of legislation before the House rises. It will include certain changes around presumptions of first-degree murder. The exact terms of the provision are under development now, and we expect over the weeks to come before the legislation is tabled that we'll finalize exactly what that specific provision will take. But until the policy work is done and we've landed on the final text, I hesitate to promise you the exact contents. Only know that that is a live conversation that included a conversation we shared with the people that you see standing at the podium today to ensure that it hits the mark and doesn't create other unintended challenges downstream. Second, this case has motivated change that's represented in the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. This came directly with conversations with certain parliamentary colleagues that I mentioned, and Minister Sharma in particular. Specifically, we did not campaign on a commitment to create a reverse onus for a person who has been convicted but has been released pending their sentencing. That change to the law came directly in response to the provincial government of British Columbia's advocacy as a result of the challenges and the gaps that were exposed from the McCourt case. We will look to ensure that we continue to take feedback, not just from the McCourt family, but from other victims of crime, to understand where has the system failed, where may it have saved a life. I have the utmost admiration for people who, through their grief, are able to pull themselves together to advocate for the kind of change that may have saved their loved ones so they can save the lives of other people that they have never met. The law needs to be able to respond to the challenges that we see in our communities and the gaps that are exposed, sadly, through tragedies. We're going to continue to work with provincial governments, with law enforcement, and with those who've been exposed to violent crime, often through tragedies such as this, to ensure that the laws can actually provide solutions that may have made a difference in tragic circumstances like this.
For my part, I wanted to say it's really important as Attorney General that I don't impact an active court process or prosecution that's undergoing, or people that may or may not be witnesses to that. So although we've made sure as a government that we're in contact with the McCourt family, and that the Premier, as he mentioned, is meeting with them today, we have to balance those things that are ongoing.
Try and squeeze in a couple more questions. Next one will be Richard Zussman, Global News. Go ahead, Richard.
Premier, just to follow up on two things you've mentioned already, I'm trying to understand, is the plan still for the province to run those ads in the United States around forestry? And on BCGU, the argument your government made throughout this is that, in essence, we couldn't afford the demands from the union. They are now getting 3% raises. How can we now afford that? And should the public sector expect that there may have to be layoffs to offset the increase in the costs through this settlement?
Thanks, Richard. So with respect to the agreement, it's in front of the members for voting. They are going to exercise their right to decide to ratify or not this agreement. I'll just express my thanks to those who are around the table. It was a lengthy and arduous negotiation, and happy to discuss this in detail post the decision of the members one way or another. With respect to your other question, which was... Are you going to still run the ads? Oh, yeah, thanks. We think it's vital to get the word out to Americans. The entire idea behind Premier Ford's advertising campaign, although I acknowledge ours was a decidedly different scale, is to get the message out to Americans about the impact of tariffs on Americans. The only people paying the additional 10% that the President announced the other day are Americans. Their prices are going to go up. They are going to feel the impact directly. And getting that message to Americans as well as American decision makers is crucial. We are going to exercise all of our ability to get the word out, including advertising to Americans. We reserve the right to do that. And we recognize that we're part of a team. So with that, I'm very much looking forward to our emergency meeting with the federal government in the coming days on forestry here in British Columbia, so that this issue gets the attention that it deserves. and particularly the forest workers and forest communities have some comfort that higher levels of government are benefit.
Richard?
Can you explain Nathan Allen's $140,000 contract at the time that the Greater Public Service is cutting back, and why this additional position is needed?
Yeah, Nathan's returning to a role that he had at Government Communications. We are doing some pretty heavy lifting in the downtown east side. I think that most British Columbians, when they see the current state of the downtown east side, they would understand why we've asked Senator Larry Campbell to come in, given his deep expertise, former coroner, as a mayor of Vancouver, and someone who's very engaged on these issues in the downtown east side. Mayor Campbell requires support in that role to engage with people in the downtown east side. Mr. Allen is the former manager of Pigeon Park Savings, which is a community credit union in the downtown east side. He brings deep connections to the community and will assist Senator Campbell in expediting the work that he needs to do for us. The status quo in the downtown east side will not stand. We're going to ensure that it is returned to a safe, low-income community, and it is not an easy issue, and it will require the cooperation and support of people in the community and outside the community for what we need to do there.
Our last question will come from Emily Joveski from Vista Radio. Go ahead, Emily.
Hi there. Just on bail reform again, I spoke to a few legal experts this week that said, holding people in jail for longer or more frequently is, going to worsen crime in some cases. And they also raised concerns about, overcrowding and conditions in jails as well. So I just wanted to get your comment on that or your response to that.
Yeah, sure. One of the challenges, and I'll say this bluntly, that my profession of lawyers sometimes has, is losing touch with where ordinary people are at. I will say that public confidence in our criminal justice system is on a precipice. People do not believe that the criminal justice system is keeping them safe from repeat violent offenders, people who go out, punch a stranger, are taken to court, and then released back into the community. I don't know how you explain that. I don't know how you explain that that person needs to be released in order to ensure that the community would be safer. It makes absolutely no sense. I believe that the legal profession needs to take a moment and reflect on where public confidence is at, and it is not in a good place. The criminal law has just a few basic jobs, right? Keep people who are violent and will attack others behind our bars, keep the community safe, and ensure that minimum community standards are upheld in terms of how we conduct ourselves with each other, and they are minimum standards. Don't punch a stranger would be an example of that. And so, I will any day defend changes to the criminal law that ensure that our communities are safe, that repeat violent offenders or repeat shoplifters are held behind bars if they do not respect our law and do not understand those minimum expectations. If they are too sick to understand those rules, we are building the beds and the supports to hold those individuals in involuntary care. There is no excuse for people to be in our communities that are conducting themselves this way, and I don't care how good the lawyer is, there is no argument that can be made to justify that.
Really, do you have
Maybe just add a component to that answer, because there are challenges, obviously, with the capacity of justice systems in different provinces. The reasons why will vary immensely because we have different systems that are run. But when I was trying to understand the right way to address this problem, I had to start from the principle that the criminal law actually needs to set out a framework that will keep communities safe. The answer to downstream challenges, whether it's overcrowding, capacity of the courts, et cetera, can't be to have weaker criminal laws that would see dangerous people go free. We have to ensure, both for the public safety imperative, but also, as the Premier mentioned, to maintain public faith in the administration of justice, that the base set of rules that apply nationally, upon which we will agree, that they're actually designed not just to manage systemic impact of the system, actually designed to keep Canadians safe. The Premier is entirely correct. This is where the Canadian public is at. They need to see that that there are going to be consequences for those actions. This may involve conversations down the road at both the federal and provincial level about whether systems are appropriately resourced, whether we have the capacity in our detention facilities, in our courts, with law enforcement to keep up with the challenges that we face in our community. But as a starting point, I think it's quite obvious to me that we have to establish a set of criminal laws that Canadians will be able to read for themselves and say, this is designed to keep me, my family, and my community safe.
And Emily, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, for Premier Eby, just a question from my colleagues on the island here. The Cowichan Nation released a statement this morning, basically calling your comments on the title case misleading. I wanted to get your response to that.
Thanks. Yeah, I understand the need for the Cowichan, their desire to go to court to get their rights recognized. They have the right to do that. We support their right to do that. We can also simultaneously disagree with the decision that Justice Young made. It has created significant uncertainty. It has direct harms for our provincial economy and for homeowners to even understand what the state of their ownership right is. It needs to be clarified as quickly as possible, which is why we were first out of the gate on the appeal on this, to get to the Court of Appeal, to get clarification about this decision. There are basic issues that need to be addressed. Even just the idea that none of the homeowners were told that this litigation was happening, despite the fact that our lawyers argued that they should have been served, they should have known that this case was going ahead. Those issues need to be canvassed on appeal, and the Attorney General and her team will make sure that that happens.
And that's all the time we have. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.